ready?
Yep.
What is this episode? What?
I think it's 4. Team Steam?
Team Steam. We shot one with Jeff, so that's like
We're up to 5.
6. I think it's 6.
I was just showing a few people on that Team Steam podcast.
Nice.
We've done 6.
Appreciate you, Mark.
So this is episode 7. Guys, we're moving up in the world. Alright, ready? Welcome to the Team Esteem Podcast, episode 7. I'm here with Manny,
Chase,
Sam.
What's going on, guys?
Today, we just finished some delicious food, and we're about to talk about Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. We all read this in the past week, and we thought we'd put together a podcast. It's also the first podcast that we're recording on video, so that's exciting. What's up, everybody?
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Of course, I don't have anything planned, so what'd you think of the book?
Solid read. I would definitely recommend it if you're hoping to find out what Man's Search for Meaning is. What do you think, Chase?
Highly esoteric, definitely brought down to ground zero in the delivery, and I think that he was definitely ahead of his time whenever he wrote it. So, especially, I think this is the 4th. I think I read the 4th edition, and whatnot.
I didn't realize there were other editions.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I mean, he wrote it in so many different languages.
Okay.
So not only do us Americans need to know the Man's Search for Meaning, but Germans do, and then all the other languages.
languages.
Yeah.
So, what about you, man?
Definitely a solid read. A lot of value in the book. Not a type of book I would usually pick up, but definitely recommend it. Good stuff.
Well, good. Let's dive into it. What, Sam, for you was your biggest takeaway? If you had to summarize the whole thing in one takeaway, or encourage someone to read it with one takeaway.
My biggest takeaway was his perspective. It was, he's credible. He's a survivor of the Holocaust, so I gotta take his word for it, honestly. I would say also your attitude plays a huge role in just your everyday life. So.
One word: context.
I like that.
If you can put everything in every experience that you go through in context and relative to the grand scheme of things, it's really important. Even the call to action that he has at the end, where he's talking about finding your search for meaning, it's different for everyone. You can't ask that in a general sense, hey, what do you guys think is the meaning of life? And all of us would have way different answers, and that's the beauty about it. So, I mean, context. You have to have that. We're contextual beings. If you don't understand that now, then I don't know if you ever will.
Along the same lines, I think perspective, as Sam was kind of alluding to, and then context are definitely big keys to take away from this. And as I was saying earlier, I think just the fact that we have a book here that claims to have the meaning of life that isn't a religious text is a really big thing. And the fact that, like you're saying, it's such a credible source, someone who's gone through so much and obviously would need to know what the meaning of life was to get through it. I think it's just such a big part of what's valuable about this book.
Yeah, I like the idea of context. If you can't control the content, at least control the context. Well, great. I think those are all excellent takeaways. What questions did the book leave for you? If you could sit down with Viktor Frankl right now, what would you want to ask him?
Personally, we were talking about this earlier about how are you able to keep your faith throughout this. He does talk about using your purpose in life, your meaning for life, as a driving force for survival, but to still hold on to the fact that you believe there is a God and that He's watching over you and is playing an impactful part in your life. I would have a hard time holding on to that thought. I think it's pretty dope.
Yeah. How do you keep your faith in a situation like that? What about you, Chase? If he was sitting here.
Number one question I would ask him is I would give him all the specifics and details of what I'm working on, when I'm give him context, and I'm be based off of my actions right here, if I didn't already know my meaning, what else would you see that I could do to find what my true purpose is?
Interesting.
So
Okay, cool.
would you sign up for a logotherapy
Logotherapy.
session with him?
Logotherapy.
Yeah.
I think he like the way that it sounded like he was going through the book. He likes working with people with neurosis,
Okay.
like
Yeah, definitely.
like people with actual like stuff going on. But like obviously having like he's academic through and through. So like having that academic background, you always want to have like those higher like level discussions. So I think I would. Yeah.
I would. I think we're all neurotic, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, we might put a label on some people as being more relatively neurotic than some others, but I mean, I can be pretty neurotic sometimes. So, you look like you got something on your mind, Sam. What's going on?
I have too many questions for Victor that I don't think.
Dude, spill them out. Let's
I don't
hear
know.
Victor, we need you.
Just how did he do it? The will to keep going. I personally, I don't see that much value in a situation like that. So I want to know what kind of scope was he looking through when he wanted to keep going. I truly believe that I would just be okay with the life I had and going to the grave, honestly. Or at least with my predicament. I definitely give credit to him. For real.
I wonder what happens in this sense of, you know, there's like a move we can all make from me to we to all in terms of our perspective in life. And so I wonder, you know, when he was talking about what he was living for, he was talking about his wife and wanting to see her. And then he was talking about he would have these visions of giving a lecture in a university and talking about his experience. So the thing that sticks out to me is that it wasn't about, hey, I want to get home so I can like play golf, or hey, I want to get home so I can like, it wasn't about him. It was about he wanted to be reconnected with his wife. It was that he wanted to serve a larger purpose to humanity by being able to tell a story about how he had a higher spiritual power running, I guess, flowing through him that was able to help him carry him through the process. So the thing that stuck out for me, and even in just what you just said, is like, what do you think of the idea of kind of like the reason to live transcending yourself? Like, as you said, like, on one level, like, I'm fine with my life, like, I'm good, like, but what about the bigger service you can have to other people or humanity by pushing through that experience, you know? Or if anybody else wants to jump in on that.
Yeah,
I mean, he doesn't explicitly say it, but yeah, you're alluding to the fact that your purpose can't be completely selfish, it seems. Because I think what Sam is trying to get to is that looking at your own life, you would say, this is enough for me. You know, like, if I don't have a purpose that is related to other people, then I'm okay with letting go. So I do think that there needs to be a we, at the very least a we, if not all, perspective as far as your meaning goes.
I agree. I think if you have, like, that's awesome. Yeah, if you
was
have
really
like that, like, how old are you?
22.
22. That's some perspective right
Yeah.
there. I just love that.
I appreciate the
Got
comment.
some wise guys at the table.
I know.
Sam's 19, it blows my mind.
And no, that's awesome. And I think that if you look at it from a narrative perspective, if you're very selfish in what your why is and what you are, then that narrative inside your head, you're almost, you have to battle with yourself each time. You have to talk to yourself each time. But when you're running a narrative where other people are part of the story, you almost push yourself a little harder because you're like, what would this person say? What would they do? And it gets you outside of your head, in your head. And I think that's like, I think that's ultimately what it has to come down to, because otherwise you'll rationalize yourself why you don't need it.
Definitely.
Right.
I think.
Someone else, you can't rationalize why they don't need it. Something like, you know, even as simple as like, you know, say you're serving up food. Like, say Forrest was serving us food and he gave me, you know, one chicken, you know, leg, which he cooked this very delicious like chicken rice.
It was gorgeous.
And he was looking at it, was like, oh my gosh, dude, love binoculars and everything.
I wasn't planning on eating it, then I saw it and I was like, I have to taste it.
But like, say Forrest like took one away because there wasn't enough, and then he gave it to himself or to someone else, and that has that like feeling that he could rationalize, Chase doesn't need it because he can go get food later, kind of deal. But that would still tick on the back of his mind. right? That he did that, and it plugs into his self-conscious. But if we do that to our minds, we don't think about it as much, right? And so I think that's why it's so we're naturally social animals. We try to think in a group-centric thing. I think that's ultimately what gets you through tough times.
Yeah, and it goes back to he talks about this concept of relative suffering, and the idea that there is no life without suffering. And so I think there is an element of, in my head, I think part of the story he was telling himself was, look, if I can get through this, it might show everyone else that they can get through whatever they're getting through. You know? Okay. Like, no matter if it's an abusive spouse, no matter if it's being bankrupt, no matter if it's, you know, your house burning down or losing your parent or whatever, like, we all suffer. That's a part of life. But if I can go through this relative level of suffering, then you know, maybe I can be very beneficial to others in just telling my story of how I did it, because I've noticed that along the same lines as him, when I'm suffering, you know, connecting to a bigger reason, or what's your why. If anyone hasn't seen the TED Talk with Simon Sinek, Start With Why and the Golden Circle, I would definitely check that out.
Great book.
Great book.
What is it?
Start with why. And so the idea is that we go around a lot and we talk about what we do and we talk about how we do it. Okay. Right? Like, you know, we mentor people and we do it by them meeting together once a week or something like that. But the people who are truly revolutionaries and who truly can have a vision and lead people are the ones who talk about why they do what they do.
Oh, wow.
You know, like, there's a bigger, the what you do and the how you do it fall out of the why. And so I really appreciate this book, because as I'm going through my journey, I can look to him and say, oh, hey, you know, I'm certainly not in a concentration camp, but as I'm trying to deal with my everyday things, there's some truth to what he's saying that I can look towards.
And for all you bros out there that are thinking that, you know what, I'm so mad she didn't text me back. Well, go through a concentration camp.
Right.
That's okay. You can calm down your internal environment and be like, all right, I probably should just wait. Or pick up the phone.
There you go. Well, okay, so let's talk about that, because another big theme, and if you guys want to start asking questions, I don't want to run the podcast, but, you know, picking up the phone, like you were talking about, there's clearly a theme in the book about life. Life is me and you are life, in the sense of, it seems like he's saying you're this infinite spiritual being, but you're also bound to the external world we live in. Meaning that you live in an environment and in circumstances, and you also at the same time create your reality by the way you choose to think about it. And there's this like dynamic tension, this like push-pull sort of thing going on between the world you live in and the world you're creating for yourself. So I don't know if that jumped off the page for you guys, but when I read that, I was like, whoa. Did that mean anything to you guys, or did you?
Well, yeah. Well, when you say that, I think that you are not your situation. That you're more than that. You have more control than you think you do have. That you have options to make decisions, and you can control your reality to some extent. I feel like.
This too shall pass.
Yeah, or shape your future. More to say. So, I mean, just with the book, it really pushes me to think less as an individual, I would say. How old was he when he was in this camp?
I'm not sure. He said his wife was 24, or had her 24th birthday.
Yeah,
that's quite
pretty young.
Oh,
Wow, that actually changed the perspective a little bit.
I don't know.
A young dude, dang, that's
well,
that's what I just feel so individual. Like I don't know.
He has MD, so I'm not sure how long it took back in that day to get your MD.
But I don't think he's older than like 35, 30.
So this is a young guy.
He's a pretty young guy, relatively.
I mean, he might be like our age.
I think one of the greatest things about this book is that you can relate to it. Even though it's such an extreme situation, being in a concentration camp, the way he the way he talks about the experience is a way that like you can still get value and apply it to your own life. And like you said earlier, we're not dealing with the same kind of stresses and difficulties that he did, but you can still you can still find a way to use the concept of finding meaning to drive you and to keep you going. I think that's the reason why I think it's such a valuable book. It's just like it just applies, you know. It's really relatable.
So what advice would you all give in terms of managing suffering? Like after reading this book and just through your own life experience, and if it is true that all human beings out there are suffering and we're all sharing that together, do you guys have any hacks or tips or
After
words of wisdom?
After reading this, the first thing is to realize like you obviously don't have the worst.
Right.
It can be worse.
Yeah,
Like
it can be
definitely,
worse.
that's the most obvious point to take away from this. But then, like he talks about, it's all about finding your reason why. And there are going to be selfish reasons. Like you want to go see your wife, you want to make it through this to see better days. But also understand that there's like you're talking about, a we and the all aspect to it, and you need to really find what that is. And he talks about the process. What was it? The whole going through suffering and really appreciating what you're going through. But you do need to find your reason, especially when you're dealing with really tough things, which we all will. I guess we will have to go through that. Yeah, inevitably. Unfortunately, maybe.
Your why is your rod and staff that will comfort you. And so, especially whenever you're going through like dark times, because if you don't have that why, then you start asking yourself, why push through it?
Yeah, that's the point.
And so, just like what you were kind of talking about it earlier, like, hey, maybe I would go do the gas chamber and volunteer for it, or start showing a limp.
Yeah. I'm not fit.
And just because if you think it's going to last all your life, like, what's the point? But at the end of the day, I think you deprive the nuances of your character to other people that could potentially inspire them, especially whenever, because you see people that go through struggles and stuff, and you never know who that journey may relate to. And then you never know when you get the platform in order to share it, that person's like, yo, I am changed because I heard this person. Because oftentimes people don't even like, they're like, oh, I've never seen this type of person do this. I've never seen this type of person do this. And they don't have any models to look at, only to realize there was models that were put in life that happened along the way. And they just didn't pull through because they didn't see that. They didn't realize that, oh my God, I could have been that model for somebody, and it would have changed people. Because all different things in history, you have someone who modeled that action. Like you look at, Rosa Parks, you look at Martin Luther King, you look at Gandhi, you look at, all these different people in history, and they modeled something that you never thought was
definitely.
Like they're the most least likely people, but they just got pushed to the edge, and they're normal, everyday people, which all of us are, right? And they just decided that something clicked in their head. I mean, off that, is there a time where you felt like, you were put in a similar situation where it was like, and we're all young dudes here, but is there a time where you had like something that happened that you were like, no, I'm not dealing with this? Absolutely not.
Personally, I've been pretty blessed. I've gone through some hardships, but I haven't really been tested.
To that
edge. Yeah, to be honest, I've been pretty blessed.
Enough.
I've not been tested that hard yet. Which I think this is why I really appreciate reading this book now, so I have this tool for it when I do encounter things like that.
That's so clutch.
Yeah.
That's so clutch what you just said.
Also, I just haven't been pushed to that extremity. So I couldn't, that's why I appreciate it so much. His leadership, his vision, even in that situation, is phenomenal.
I think right now, as far as the hardest thing I've been through, would be probably this stage of my life now where we're starting to realize what we're going to do with ourselves. And we're not there yet. So you're in the journey part of your life, like the early journey part. And it looks long, Yeah. So you have to have your goals in your mind. You need to
like
have
your
your
why.
meaning. Exactly. You have to really have your why figured out.
Yeah.
And there are days like I'll wake up and I feel kind of unmotivated just because it seems I'm so far away from my goals. And because I have pretty lofty goals, I feel like, for myself, especially considering like my situation and stuff. But books like this, messages like this, where you're really forced to focus on what's driving you, I think it's really valuable.
So what are your goals?
Personally, I think broadly it would be, I've always told myself I wanted to make 6 figures, and that's just not where like financially, like my people combined didn't make six figures. They barely, you know, it was just came from relative poverty. So I consider my goals pretty lofty. And I also want to be like self-employed. I'm interested in the entrepreneur route, which is just things I haven't been able to see firsthand for a lot of my life. So yeah, just really focusing on my why. I think is really important for me.
So why do you want to make six figures, and why do you want to be a business owner?
It's, I guess, these are more invasive questions than I had expected.
Oh, sorry.
I
appreciate
appreciate the challenge.
No.
As far as six figures, I just felt like $100,000. That was, for me, that was just a low bar. First of all, I know it's possible. Like, I just know that that's something attainable. I think part of me is scared to say I want to make millions of dollars, even though in the back of my mind I would love to be a millionaire. But I think it's really an attainable goal to say at least 100,000. And I just always associate that with financial security when you're making at least 100,000. I'm sure maybe as I start growing my income, maybe around 75,000, I'll be like, okay, now I'm financially stable. I don't need the 100,000. But I just think it's a solid goal. I don't know. It's a little arbitrary, but.
Well, I'm sorry for pushing it.
No, I wasn't trying. I appreciate the challenge. Yeah, that's why we're here.
Welcome to the mentoring session, brought to you by Master Wilson.
No, the reason, I don't mean to do stuff without permission, but
we're all friends here.
Yeah, right. I think for me, it's like when you have your why really clear, the goals even become less important in a sense.
Like the actual number of 100,000.
Yeah, because it's like, because I used to have these goals, and it was like I realized all of a sudden, and it's weird to like be someone who mentors people a lot and say that I don't really set goals now, but it's almost like I have a really strong why. And I noticed when I had goals, I was tricking myself a little bit because I was kind of saying to myself, I'm not going to be happy until I achieve this goal. And so it was like, what do you do for all that time in between now and six figures? It's like, what if your real why is you want to be wealthy, and that's like can be a relative definition. Like I personally think I'm really wealthy right now. Like I don't say that because I have a big bank account. As a matter of fact, I don't right now. I've been dumping so much money into our projects. I'm like broke. But like I have a really nice place to live in. I just had a phenomenal meal. I have incredible friends like you guys.
Definitely.
We're producing creative content. Like I have one of the best lives ever.
Definitely.
And I think part of it is that when you have another thing, and this is just my situation, but when I had goals, I just wanted like to be at my goal, and I didn't want to deal with the process or anything. And now it's like I kind of crave it. Like now that I have this why, it's like when I moved abroad right after I graduated from college, I moved to Singapore and took a job, and I was extremely fortunate to do this. But I'll tell you, I did it. A lot of the reason I did it is because my dad was really sick. Because taking a 24-hour flight to the other side of the world scared the shit out of me. And when I got over there, I was the most exhilarated and excited and scared out of my mind at the same time that I've ever been. And so there was a bigger reason of doing it just to like put myself in an experience that made me really uncomfortable so that I could grow. It's like I know Chase is a personal trainer, like, maybe getting under a barbell with 315 pounds to do back squats is not the most pleasurable thing. But when you're doing it for the purpose of growing stronger, you crave it. Like you want it.
Definitely.
You want to get under there and struggle and fight it and grow and push. So I know I was going all over the place a little bit there, but the point of it being like you can actually take suffering and put it underneath the context of I'm doing this to grow stronger, or I'm doing this to help other people, or I'm doing this to be able to serve. And you want it. Like you want more challenges. You want to have opportunities for growth. You want opportunities to struggle and to push yourself. You almost like start to have a bad taste in your mouth when you think about this stagnant environment, and it becomes like you're operating underneath a different why.
Definitely.
So anyway, if anything that I just said resonate or anything like
that. New problems equals new growth. Definitely. And I think on the edge of fear is actually life. That's when you feel like you're living.
Oh, look at you, Yoda over here.
Well, an edge of fear is often bliss.
Yeah. Agreed. I remember when I was skydiving, like I love adrenaline stuff.
Yeah.
Like you put me in snowboarding, you put me in that. The only thing I really don't feel like I'm excited to do, and I probably won't do, but maybe just because I just said that I don't like doing underwater stuff. I actually learned that I actually started competitively swimming because like I was afraid of drowning.
Really?
Right? And so I used to like swim when I was a kid, and like now I swim all the time, but like when someone's like, oh yeah, let's go scuba diving, I'm like, I can think of 18 things I'd like to do besides that. But like when I was skydiving, like I'm sitting there on the edge of like, so like they bring you up in the plane, and first off, the anticipation is starting to mount once you sit on the plane.
Right.
And then you have, I asked for like the surliest, most seasoned guy to like be strapped to me for this tandem jump, and they give me some punk 34-year-old, and I'm like, I wanted some guy who is like 50 years old, gray hair. He's came down a few times safely, and I'm like, I'm looking at him, and I'm like, he's strapped to me. He looks like a tree frog compared to me. Because at this time, I'm like still fresh out of college from like college wrestling, and I'm like, how are you? Well, I mean, I'm gonna wear you like a backpack.
Yeah.
And then like, so we get to the, you know, we climb, we get to the jump altitude, and then it's my turn to jump, and then I'm sitting on the edge of the plane. They already did that whole like, hey, this is what you do to jump and everything, and we're sitting there for what seems like 10 full seconds. And when I say 10 full seconds, it's like, that's not a long time. Well, when your feet are hanging out of a plane and the only thing that's stopping you is the tree frog on your back that's messing around with your straps, been like, bro, we should have got that done when my feet aren't out. Like, and then you start getting up like second number 7, and I'm like, you know what? F it. Just like push me out and fix it on the way down. I don't care. Like, I just don't want to be on the edge anymore because it's like super uncomfortable because I'm like trying to look at him to say something, and I'm like, one eye is looking at him, the other eye is I see the propeller of the plane, and I'm like, I am not excited right now. Just get me off of this plane. And then finally he's like, good to go. And I was like, and it was absolute bliss for about 60-second free fall. And it was so much fun, and I can't wait to take my fiance to it because she lost a bet, and she was trying to take me to a haunted house. And so that upped the ante because I don't do scary. I'm too big for that. I'll hurt you. And then I won, and now she's going to go skydiving in October. So like, but yeah, I mean.
Is she apprehensive?
100%.
Yeah.
She's like, I thought you loved me. Don't make me do that. But
you guys ever been?
No.
What? No. That was on
Have
the
you
bucket
been?
list.
Yeah, it's about
Okay, yeah. I was about to say.
I had to do it.
You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you flew to Singapore.
Right.
You probably
It's the
did it
same
while
reason.
you were out there.
Oh, I tried to go skydiving in Dubai, and this is like one of those weird situations where I weighed half of a pound too much, so they wouldn't let me jump.
Really?
I weighed 200. You had to be under 100 kilos, which is 220 pounds, and I weighed 220 and a half pounds. So they wouldn't let me jump.
You couldn't like spit in
Oh,
a bucket.
dude, I was puking and everything, sweating, running around, and it just didn't
man.
work.
What?
But anyway, so then I went down to Charleston, went skydiving for like New Year's, and yeah, it's crazy. Like it's nuts. You get up there and you're like, okay, like, we're about to do this. Yeah, and the guy. So I went with Jess, and when she went, of course, like she got out there and they just like kind of softly float down. My guy's like, you want to do some tricks? I'm like, hell yeah. And you're like, oh, of course.
We're here, so
we're
we
doing
might as
it,
well.
so I'll do it. And so he's like doing all these crazy things in and out, blah, blah, and I'm like, hey, you know, it's one of those things, like once you go out, like the fear is over, because like if you're gonna hit the ground, like you're like 10 seconds from that, so like you're just like, you know.
You're like, free
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I had to do it. I don't know if I'll go again because that wasn't the biggest adrenaline rush I've ever gotten. I kind of got out there and it was, I wouldn't say it was a letdown, but it was kind of like that wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be.
You're essentially saying skydiving isn't enough for you.
Kind of.
No, it's a gateway drug.
It's a gateway drug.
Then he's going to actually do it, but not tandem. He's
There
going to
you
do it
go.
all. by
Oh,
himself.
is that what you're looking for? Oh, okay.
That'd be fun. Or those things where they go with the suits with the wings.
Squirrel suits.
Squirrel suits.
100% would love to do
I
that.
would love to do that. That shit is
There
crazy.
you
You
go.
get going like 120 miles an hour and then you get out. Oh my god.
I would love to
And you're
base
like
jump.
just base base jumping,
Yeah.
And you're right next to the mountain and like right over the trees, like.
Dude, let's go to France. Everyone at this table. All right, we're gonna go to France.
Yes.
And there's this giant mountain, and I want you to picture this. You're gonna run as fast as you can off that mountain, and then you're just gonna be like,
Yeah.
all right, and then you're gonna go, and then we're just gonna follow each other like a trail.
Yeah.
I saw this video where this dude like literally brought his dog with him.
What?
Put him in a backpack, gave him like little goggles. His little ears are going. It was amazing. So, but I don't know what this has to do with Victor. But
kind of veered off a little bit.
Yeah, we've gotten off a little bit. It's cool. It happens. Go with the flow.
So fear.
So fear,
So, yeah,
Fear's
fear.
part of it. Well, I'll turn. You guys got some questions you want to ask? I don't.
So I'd say, have you guys figured out your meaning? Both of
Ooh.
Yeah.
you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you mind
You
sharing
think you
it?
have? Oh yeah,
Yeah,
please.
please.
Go ahead.
If you could articulate.
You first. You're the oldest.
I say I
Age
will
before
not.
beauty,
Age
right?
before beauty.
My purpose is to optimize and maximize the potential of others so that they can shed their light on this world and the next. And, through doing that, through business and helping them in health, because honestly, like I'm gonna live to 130. So just want you guys to know that, like I'm gonna be that old grandpa where you look at my birth certificate, you're like, this is forged. This is definitely forged. You're not 128. I'm like, yeah, I got 2 more years, son. So, and for me, like I want to be able to, honestly, I want to influence how technology flows, and I want to do that through business.
Okay.
And so the reason in that being is that I didn't choose, I have a great fascination for technology, whether in biology. I mean, I already talked to you guys, like I can watch you walk and I can tell like what
Definitely.
sports you did.
Definitely.
I can tell like,
Very impressive stuff, by the way.
but I mean like that's something that comes natural to me. So for what I'm trying to accomplish is, and it has to be a total social, evolution. Like it can't be just one part of you, because if you only have one part, like, you've seen the big fitness thing happening right now where like CrossFit and you got people doing competitions and everyone gets trophies and super excited for you and everything like that. That's not something I'm not putting it down.
Yeah,
like if you want to do that,
definitely.
but like I looked at that and I was like, that's just not my thing. I'm super happy for people that want to do that. But if you're not growing health-wise, if you're not growing in mind and in spirit, you're always going to have something that pulls you down. You're going to have a ball and chain somewhere. So, to be able to influence some of those decisions that, I think that would turn society in the right way. But unfortunately, the path that I took was not on the technician side. It's going to have to be, I'm really good at promoting it. I can talk about tech all the time. It's exciting. It's easy. It's whatever. All right. But I can talk about health. I can make it fun. I can story tell, and I can also do that. And that is something that I'm trying to accomplish. And that's my why. So that's why I'm doing all the things I'm doing with my business, my personal training business, and then also some other things that I'm lining up. Also connecting people with other people. So
You're like the match. If we're all like candles, you're the guy who's like the lights on, Shit.
I don't know about all that. So if that's true, then that means that, Forrest is the wick. I gave you enough time.
But I think the thing I wanted to address is just to bring it back to the book real quick. You know how he talks about when people, it's like it's one thing to have your own purpose, but when you actually are in a community of people who have a shared purpose, that the energy becomes even stronger and you start to attract other people. Because I'm listening to Chase, I'm like, wow, like I might edit a word or two. Or, I'm going to say mine in a second, and it sounds a little bit differently. But there's a reason why Chase and I have become such good friends. Like we went to high school together, didn't really hang out a ton, but reconnected later on. And it's because every time we sit down, every conversation we have, every time we talk on the phone, every book we read, every coffee we go get, we're talking about a world that we want to create and live in. We're talking about a future we want to build. We're talking about an impact we want to have on the world. We are part of something bigger than us. We are part of like a movement to do something. But I just appreciate you sharing. I mean, it's phenomenal here. I'm so happy to hang out with you. But
you're like, thank God he had an answer.
So for me, like like as just me personally, like I'm very creative, and I do it integrated across my life. I do it in my businesses, like co-founding this nonprofit, building an app. Like I just did it in the kitchen a minute ago. Like I'm always, we're creating a podcast right now, creating a video right now. Like I'm always creating.
And you made a really good dinner. Don't forget about what you created there.
But expanding that above myself, I want to coach and to challenge people to be their most creative selves, and then to connect with themselves on a deep level, to be able to express themselves, and to be able to do what they really feel gives them the most life and gives them the most energy and the most purpose.
Why did you use the word deep?
Because it's inside yourself. The thing that I've realized is you have to turn. I spent so much of my life looking at the external world, thinking about what I want, and when I finally turn that compass inward, you go deeper and you go deeper and you go deeper and you go deeper, and that's where the real universe is inside yourself.
How do you balance having that inward focus and that outward
external results? Well, I wouldn't say I have it perfected. I'm working on it, but I've noticed that the more that I go inside myself and the deeper that I go and the more clear I am on who I am and what my purpose is in life, the more my external world moves itself to facilitate that. So I definitely am leading more towards my internal work than the external work, because the external work just seems to be a reflection of what's going on inside of me. It doesn't really, it's one of those things, like I used to have, like I was talking about, I used to have goals, or I used to have ways that I want to change things. Now I've noticed that the more I get myself in alignment with who I actually think I need to be and what I actually want, then the world just starts to mirror that. So yeah.
You guys are tracking on this, right? That's good stuff.
You're
tracking? Oh my God, if you're not tracking.
We gotta record it.
Rewind right now. You need to go back and rewind what you just heard. Or saw.
Wow.
Or so.
Yeah. But
I will say, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, but I think that, being a part of a community that's sharing, again, it's not exactly always the same wording, but sharing that similar journey. I mean, I know you guys are all diving deep and going inward and working on getting yourself in alignment with these things. So it's powerful to be around like-minded people. Like one of our team's team quotes is, "You're a product of the 5 people you spend the most time with." So audit your friend group.
Your friend group. Well, I will say it's certainly a privilege to learn from you all. I always soak in these podcasts and these moments that you guys are teaching. So while I'm figuring out my why and what my purpose is, I think it's awesome to have higher counsel to always look towards.
Do you have any idea of what your why might be, or are you moving towards any?
It's my why. I right now I don't have it figured out.
In the searching process.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same.
You
As
think
far
so?
as my broader why, pretty much.
Of course, you want to help out your family,
Definitely.
make people proud, but
Yeah.
I don't know what I want personally.
I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I'll let you go first. Yeah.
There's nothing bad with that, gentlemen. I mean, you think about it. This goes back to one of the other podcasts that we did with Shoe Dog, and the Phil Knight. He actually he experienced so many different things that once you can actually find out more about you. But if you have a very narrow focus on what life can be, like welcome to Northern Virginia, well, there's 49 other states, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a whole nother world out there, just understanding that now's the time to I mean, here's my thought. I'm not professional in this, super executive coach or anything like that, but if you don't honestly know what you want right away, and you're not self-aware enough to kind of figure out and kind of scope through, what am I really, go experience the world if you can. If you have that option,
Have fresh eyes.
Yeah, go do it. Go experience the world. Go experience multiple different things, so you find out work for a few people for free in terms of that. Provide value while you go through. Don't just take from the world. Make sure you get back to it. Campground rules, gentlemen. So make sure you left it better than what you came. So I don't know if that tracks with what you're talking about, but
Totally.
In this process, are we looking for perspective, or are we looking for?
Think about it like this. So we have this cup here, all right? And say this cup is our vehicle on the road.
Okay.
Every GPS, do you know how many satellites it needs in order to find your location?
Honestly, I don't.
Needs 3.
Okay.
At least 3.
Okay.
Right? And so it needs 3 different perspectives to triangulate your position in life.
All right.
Right? Or where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
So then, once you know where you are, you just find the destination where you're trying to go. But that's why whenever you're going and you're traveling through life and you're meeting people like Forrest, people that actually like care about you, and like people, here's the thing, look for people that see your spirit and see who you are as a person. If you see someone that looks at you as a transactional value,
okay,
be careful.
Okay,
definitely. Right? But as you're collecting all those different perspectives, I mean, oftentimes, like, you gotta think about it this way, we're humans, right? There's all different humans, all different across the nation. They might provide a perspective that literally just kind of, when I went over to China, they think way different, right?
Yeah.
And first off, I'm taller than everyone, so like my perspective is different from them. When I first got off the plane, it was like looking at a sea of black helmets. Right? So I mean, like that's just the way it is. But I also learned from like talking with some cool people.
Definitely.
I'm like, I never really thought about it. Like the feng shui thing I was telling you about, like I didn't know what feng shui was. I just thought it was a word. And then he told me like what the difference is between like why a mountain and a river have a relationship together, because the river cut out the rock.
Right.
So, but yeah, so went in there.
Thank you.
And I would just to piggyback on what Chase said, which is hard to do because his stuff's always so good. But you guys, first of all, enjoy this time period, because you guys are doing something that honestly most people never do. They spend their entire lives in a me focus and what are my goals and what do I have to learn and what do I achieve. So you guys have gotten to a place that most people don't get to, and it's a fun place to be. And a lot of times, like at least for me, when I got to where y'all were, like I didn't actually enjoy it that much because I was putting so much pressure on myself to figure it out. And I wish I hadn't done that, because I actually, like, it's something to embrace. Like Chase was saying, traveling, I mean, when I went to India, my senior year of college, I saw poverty there, unlike poverty I've ever seen in my entire life. And so when you're in this seeking stage, you know, when you're in this self-questioning stage, traveling's huge, reading books is huge, journaling, if you have a journal, that's really big. Any type of discussion group like this is really phenomenal.
Obviously.
And getting into your body, that's another big thing, because the other thing about those, you know, our world really values your brain, but your body has so much intuitive knowledge and wisdom that if you can do yoga or meditation or go to the gym or whatever, but that process of connecting with your body is so important. So I would rattle off those few things to be helpful. Also, you know, one of the things I did after I went to India, when I took that job, to be honest with you, I took it because I wanted to make a lot of money. And then I started, you can play with your assumptions and say, you know, if I had an infinite amount of money, or if I got $2 billion tomorrow or something, what would I do with my time? And I think just to say, like, I mean, you guys would figure this out in a day of thinking about it, but to skip ahead, it starts to be, who would you help? I mean, that really is what comes out of that discussion. It's like, well, if I had all the money, I could travel anywhere, I could buy anything I wanted, blah, blah, then what would I do with my time? Okay, I start to see that the reason we're all here is to help each other out.
Definitely.
He just saved you 2 days.
But how you want to plug yourself into that larger ecosystem is not only becoming self-aware and recognizing what you can do, but also then looking back at the bigger picture and saying, how is what I'm doing plugging into the entire ecosystem? Because the truth of the matter is like we said earlier, you're so small that in some capacity you don't matter at all. But then on the other side of it, like, you have such a large impact in the world and what you do. I mean, shooting this podcast, even if only 10 people listen to it, it will have an impact. Like, it does something, right? But then again, there's billions of people on the planet, right? So like, what you know, there's always relativity. But you could have a large impact on a few number of people, or a small impact on a large number of people, or whatever. But yeah. Anyway, that was rambling. But I would embrace the time and the journey, and just love that, you know, you guys are seeking. Hopefully you'll catch the golden snitch to keep the hair higher. Oh, and one more thing. Everything in the world is always changing. Mm-hmm. So your purpose in life could be something right now and then be something different tomorrow or a year from now or whatever. So it's also not always like my one purpose in life, blah, blah, blah. It could literally be, what is my purpose right now? And, and just being comfortable with the fact that that can evolve and change over time. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Can we get some snaps?
Team snaps.
No, and that feeds directly back into Viktor Frankl's book when it comes to searching for your meaning. Mm-hmm. He says you can't ask a general question. We all sit down here and say, "What's the meaning to life?"
Right.
It has to be in meaningful specifics.
In what context?
Right.
In what in what context?
Right.
And so, I think everyone that's hearing all of us kind of talk or seeing us as we're shooting this, honestly, you have to figure out all that stuff. And I think that was clutch what you were talking about, because if you don't have all those different perspectives and you don't know the right questions to ask yourself, and you're just throwing this question out to the wind, the wind's not going to answer you.
Definitely.
Right? So, yeah, I think that it's really cool. I mean, I've never read a book from someone that's gone through the Holocaust. So this was just the pure perspective on how good I have it.
Definitely.
I felt like while I was reading it, I don't know if you guys were like when someone slighted me, I was like, because normally I have a high I have a short fuse when it comes to getting irritated, but I have a high fuse, a very long fuse before I'll even explode or do anything like that.
Oh, I'm the same way actually. Yeah.
I'm annoyed.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly.
But then eventually, whenever that fuse blows, then Manny's just like, I must unleash. But I think reading this book gives so much good perspective that I don't think that was the intent of the book, but as a byproduct, I was I'm walking through and I'm like, hey, it's all good, especially if someone flips you off in traffic, which is always present here.
Yeah, well, and it goes to, I don't want to butcher the quote. They say the last of human freedoms is your ability to choose your attitude about your own circumstances. Is that the wording they use?
I'm not sure if that's the wording, but I'm sure that's
what
it's
the spirit, definitely.
So it's
I like that. Yeah, the spirit.
The spirit of it. Yeah. The
Manny, you're
I actually tried very hard.
He's with it. But yeah, that's you're like you said, you might have someone flick you off, but how does your internal environment get set? Is it by other people? And I mean, even when you first walked in, Manny, and you were like, and I asked you what you were doing, you're like, oh, I just majored in political science at Virginia Tech, and I was like, cool, and you're like, is it cool? I was like, does my opinion matter? Yeah, I think it's cool, but I hope that doesn't really matter. Anyway, okay, I just ran out of steam. Probably went off track.
And we had this really deep esoteric. We went so deep that we ended up in the clouds. Literally, a conversation right before this, and we had to get ourselves warmed up for the podcast and whatnot. But it's pretty hilarious. Sam was like, "Wait, can we just get started? Can we just get started?" He's like, "I'm ready to go."
Yeah.
Some of us are a little bit have to we need to warm up our brains because we got to switch tasks. So
the old heads.
The old heads. Come on.
No, we're not even there. I'm 27. I'm 5 years away from it. Just remember that.
It's a long 5 years.
I did learn a lot in that 5 years.
Yeah,
so I'm actually a different person if you think about it.
Definitely.
So in that time frame, just you're not the same person. You value things differently. I used to run around doing typical college stuff, and it was probably not the most productive use of my time. And so that's why I really am jealous of people like Zuckerberg or whatever. Zuckerberg.
Home of the good burger.
Home of the good burger. But yeah, he's the two wealthiest people that went to Harvard dropped out. Yeah, and they were they were just working on their own stuff. And I'm like, if I wasn't like drinking beer and chasing girls, this would have been really awesome because I was really focused on that. So, but it evolves. Like you find that you don't need that anymore, and you find your why. And also that environment is such a crapshoot. So
I hope I'm not going too deep here, but to go, like, I actually think I'm a different person after, like, this podcast and this dinner and, like, reading this book. Like, I see it on, like, micro intervals now.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I hadn't really met you before today. I feel like I'm a different person. Like, I always, my coach says you are contagious. So, like, if you come into contact with someone, that's, like, why you were just talking about a bad environment. Like, you have to really, like, be mindful and conscious and choose what you do and what environments you put yourself into, because everything is always like energy is always blending together and stuff. Like who you come into contact with, the experiences you have, what you eat, like it shapes who you are.
Definitely.
So like in a sense, I definitely see myself different than 5 years ago. Absolutely. I mean, I'm entirely different. I used to do drinking a bunch of beers and chase girls, just like Chase was saying. I also feel like I'm a different person than I was this morning.
It's good that we didn't chase the same girls.
Yeah.
I would have been like left in the dust and out like a little sore puppy. I'd be like, no, Forrest, your game is too strong. Why you hurt me like that? Like save something for the paupers.
Oh, this is just another kind of suffering, right? Oh man.
Go through it.
It's unavoidable.
Sam's like just came out of nowhere with that one. He's like, oh, I know this struggle. Oh gosh, yeah. Well, anyway, I think you're constantly a different person. You know, everything's always in flux. So.
Any other big takeaways from the book?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, we touched on a lot here.
We
did.
did. We went deep. We went wide.
Not to say that we talked about everything that the book has to offer, but we've hit a lot of really big points.
Yeah, go read the book.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Man.
And then let us know what you think. Comment on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. Maybe there'll be a different platform by the time you've read the book. But yeah, email. I don't care. Just tell us what you think.
Yeah.
We want to know.
Don't be a lurker. Don't be like one of those people that listens. You're like, oh, this is really cool. I really enjoyed it. And this esoteric conversation, it's very stimulating right before work, and then you don't comment because you get out of the car.
You're going to need a logo therapist because you're going to be all neurotic in your head. Share the thoughts. Some logo therapy.
You'll get that joke after you read the book.
Yeah.
Just a quick note. It's actually a very practical book. I just want to stress that out. I would honestly take a notepad while you read it and really take down some of it, because he actually goes through the process of finding your meaning. So you can actually read this book and then start implementing what you learn.
And it's a short book.
And it's really
short.
Short. Yeah.
I mean, simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication.
Right.
What about you? What were some of your main takeaways?
I would say
Sam, you're normally on
this book was tough for me. I mean, finding your meaning.
It's definitely heavy.
It's heavy for me. I don't know. I'm not really for suffering, as you see.
He's like, no, put me in the gas chamber.
Any sort of rigor is definitely on the opposition. But I would say, enjoy the process. I would say, whatever that is, try to find hope in it. I think he was big on finding some sort of hope at whatever age he was at. And enduring, so.
And laughing.
And laughing. In that kind of circumstance, I
That's huge. Humor.
Have to. Just when you think you're cool, there's a corner of a table where you're going to stub your toe on.
Oh, yeah.
Or you live with a guy that his name's Zach.
Yeah.
He reminds you.
Yeah. Because I'm doing all this work on my purpose in life, and I can't remember to turn this stupid oven on. So don't ever take yourself too seriously, and I really mean that. Do not ever take yourself too seriously. If you can't laugh at yourself, you are living in a mental prison. So.
What about you? What was your?
This is one of those. So in the age of information that we live in, access to information is certainly not the problem. It's access to good information that you need. And I'm starting to realize, I've read a lot of books now, and for me, I'm starting to get to the point of I think I'm just going to start rereading the right books as
Definitely.
opposed to just keep reading all the new ones. But this is one that I think you need to visit multiple times in your life. It's to be honest with you, it's tough for me to read because you sit there and there's so much going on in your subconscious that you get like tired reading it.
Right.
You really do. Like your body gets tired reading it. Like I had to take a nap reading it because it's like
I fell asleep. I literally told you.
there's literally like there's so much going on that you're not even like consciously aware of in the back of your mind. You're like unraveling all these things, blah blah, and you just get exhausted. So like, you know, I think this is one of those books that you've got to put on your bookshelf and be able to revisit it. You know, I don't know if people are once a year readers or once every 5 year readers or whatever, but like what, you know, if you can read this every time, this is just one of those books where if you can revisit it, you're going to have different takeaways, and there's more to be gained to it than just one read. The biggest quote, as you guys know, I was talking about this earlier. The quote
Get it for us.
that sticks out to me.
Get after it.
Yeah.
Do it. Read it. I know you're firing for it.
We have come to know man as he really is. After all, man is that being who invented the gas chambers of Auschwitz. However, he is also that being who entered those gas chambers upright, with the Lord's Prayer or the Shema Yisrael on his lips. And this quote really sticks out to me because it's talking about how man did, you know, I don't need to regurgitate the quote. Man created the gas chamber. He was also the ones going in it. So my biggest takeaway is if every person is capable of being both sides of that coin, because I think that, you know, in our discussion, again, we visit all things of like concept of like what would it be like to be Viktor Frankl, but there's a whole conversation about what would it be like to be a Nazi or someone in the SS, you know, and when you realize that every man is capable of enduring endless suffering, they're also capable of building a gas chamber or pulling a trigger or doing, you know, all these other things, that those shadows exist inside yourself. That brings up a whole nother podcast. So that's my biggest takeaway and probably a reason that I need to reread the book. So maybe I won't wait a year. I'll just do it again next week.
One more note if I could make.
Please.
You don't have to be lost to read this book as well. I know we're talking about you might get the impression that we're kids who are like lost and looking for meaning, but I felt pretty grounded before I picked it up. But it really does give you some further introspection that you can go into, and I really think anyone could pick up this book and find value. Honestly,
Great perspective, Manny.
Great point. What about you, Chase?
I'm definitely a different person after this podcast. You know,
Touche.
yeah, it's just funny. Like you get into a room, you're talking about one thing, and you know you're looking at this book, and you see pages, you see quotes that stick out to you, you see things that stick out to you, you see things that you fell asleep on. And then, I'm honestly like I'm imagining Sam like just falling asleep on like the page, and then like the words are coming in via osmosis,
right.
and he's like, I know all because this kid reads all the time. So. But no, I mean...
I was imagining like, why is Forrest making me read this?
Like, this is the wrong book. I choose this book.
We might need a lighter book after this.
Maybe a lighter.
Okay. All right, we'll read Clifford the Big Red Dog.
Something. I don't know.
No, I think it was really cool hearing like everyone's, you know, different perspective on what they got from the book, because, you know, like you were saying, like you don't have to be lost to find it, but the other thing is, as you're going through and you find your why, you'll actually know what it looks like because of what you read there. And I don't know if you actually know like how profound that was, that you said that, because if you don't chase after perspective whenever things like finally come to you, you might not know that was your diamond for you to pick up, right? Because oftentimes, like, and this is something that, like, I would say that I'm a good listener, but I probably didn't always enact on things that I heard, and so I kind of always wanted things to come to me, and it doesn't work like that. And so, but I always noticed, I was like, wait, why did he say that? And so that's something I picked up from what you said, is that you reading that book, you being a 22-year-old young man, that you're basically kind of taking the world by storm. You guys are making things happen, kind of deal. You'll find your purpose. You'll know what it looks like, and it doesn't matter what level you're at. There might be times where like you'll enjoy that book more than you do now, and other times where you're like, someone quotes this book to me.
I might.
It looks like exactly where Sam is.
Yeah, Sam is at that level. So, but I think my favorite quote from Viktor Frankl is, there should be a statue of responsibility on the West Coast to marry the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast. And so we all have a personal responsibility to exercise our liberties and make sure we don't trample on others. And I think that what he went through in this book, I think, is where that quote came from, because he had his liberties trampled on, even whenever he was fighting that, or he wasn't fighting, but that one SS officer, the pig-faced one, he was like, you know, what I'm sure that you like charged everyone up the wazoo, you rich like swine or swine. And whatnot. And he's like, no, actually, I was treating people for free, like you indignant bastard. So, but yeah. Yeah, we're looking at you.
Oh, we're looking at me.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sam's gonna reread this in a few years and
I
really
already
appreciate it.
I already know I'm gonna have to read this book again. It's just like, me and Manny talk about this often. It's like, we know once you get to that position where you're supposed to help those less fortunate than you are, and it's just like, I'm just trying to figure out what platform do I want to do that from? Because of course you're gonna aid somehow, right? I feel like you're obligated to when you make it to that to that period in life. It's just, what platform? What do I want to be? Because I'm sure any of us at this table could pursue a profession and
be
go ahead and be successful and
Crush it.
But it's like, it's like, but is that really what I'm called to do? You know.
So
it's
this
just, that's where I struggle at. I feel like
this brings out I know I talked about traveling and journaling and reading and blah blah, but another thing that's extremely helpful is feedback. Because honestly, Sam, like,